All right, welcome back. We are COMP125. That's client-side web development in the summer 2020 semester, and it's week 7, part 1. We're going to start talking about object-oriented programming with JavaScript, but first, let's go to the schedule a little bit. So we've kind of finished this part off, and we're into week 7. Normally, what we had is week 6 last week, like I told you, where we were supposed to do a test, midterm test last week. But we're moving it to this week. So it's going to move to starting on Wednesday. I'm going to make it available to you guys. It's going to be a practical test, hands-on, that you'll have a chance to do remotely. So there will not be true, false, multiple choice. I'll ask you to do something with JavaScript, probably something very straightforward that you'll be doing. So look out for that stuff. It'll be coming up. Again, starting on Wednesday. I'll give you the details on Wednesday for your test. When the test is released, you'll have until Friday of this week to get it done. Okay, there will be no extensions. If you can't get it done by Friday, it's like you missed your exam. Okay, so you have between Wednesday and Friday to get it done. You have unlimited attempts between Wednesday and Friday, and it'll be Friday night at midnight. Okay, so that's how your test will happen. There will be a portion of your test that you may have to record something. So just like before, I may ask you to explain something that takes 5 minutes, go through the material and explain, and I'll go over all that with you on Wednesday. Okay, so that's coming up on Wednesday, the test, because it's moving from week 6 to week 7, like I said last time. Also, you'll be getting another assignment very shortly. And the assignment you'll be getting is going to be, again, it's another assignment to get us closer to being in line with the stuff that's supposed to be for class. So that way you guys have, you're closer to having yourself in line with the other classes. That's what I'm looking to do without increasing the mark range for the current assignments that you have. Okay, so that's what's happening. You'll be getting that shortly as well. All right, so I know that there's some questions. A lot of people fired me emails and stuff like this on Friday night saying, hey, I need more time. It's Friday afternoon and I'm suffering. I don't know how to do this and I need more time. The answer is going to be no, guys. There's no time, right? That's why I said to you guys, if you deliver late, that's fine, but I can't give you more time. I can't say, well, I'm going to give you 3 more days, 2 more days, 1 more day. It's not going to happen. When I give you guys a due date, it's firm, right? So unless there's an emergency, family emergency or something else like that, your due date is firm every single time. All right, that means coming up last week that we had this thing happening. You guys are having trouble or whatever, and sending me code at the last minute. Some people sent me code like at 11 o'clock on Friday night saying, "Hey, professor, I need help on this piece of code. I don't know why, but it's not working." And it was like 11 o'clock on Friday night. Yeah, no, I'm not going to give you guys help at 11 o'clock on Friday night with a piece of code that I'm seeing in an email. I can't, guys. You don't know where I am. I'm not on 24 hours, right? So you got to be reasonable in terms of the time frame. And sometimes I do go away on the weekend. If I don't work, just like everybody else, if I don't get back to you, it's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's because I'm not available, right? So if I don't respond, it's because I can't respond, not because I don't want to. It could be that I'm up on a ladder doing some renovations. COVID-19 drives you to do different things. Or it could be that I'm away with the family or something like that. So if you're late, just hand in what you have. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to be terrible with your marking. All you have to do is do what you have to do and do the best you can do. All right? There's lots of resources online for the things I've asked you to do. I know I got some other people who sent me emails on Thursday saying, hey, I'm ready to submit. Can you take a look at the stuff that I have and give me feedback? For those people, and for some people even on early Friday, I gave them feedback, as an example. But then people who email me like close to the due date or on Saturday tell me they want more time, they didn't submit. I can't respond, and it's not because I don't want to. So please be reasonable is all I'm asking, and I can be reasonable with you. Okay, so that's just the administrative part aside. Now let's get to the meat and bones of what we're talking about today. So again, we're moving into this new area of development for JavaScript now. Before, what we've been doing is the easy part of JavaScript, connecting to, to resources, elements online. That's what we've been doing. And now we're heading into something more challenging. So again, just to reiterate, test 1 will be released Wednesday. We'll do a short review on what's on the test on Wednesday, right? It'll be everything that Professor Patrick has covered, up to and including the stuff that is not today, from last week, will be on the test. So there won't be object-oriented programming on the test, okay? It'll be all the other stuff. Regular JavaScript, numbers, all that stuff, data types, and I'll go over all the details with you guys as you go forward. So what are we doing this week? Because we're not going to stop, the lectures this week. We're going to continue lecturing because, again, we have a little bit more of a compressed schedule this semester compared to other semesters. I want to make sure that you have everything you need so that you're successful with the stuff that I've asked you to do. So today we're starting with object-oriented programming. When we say object-oriented programming in JavaScript, I want to reiterate that it's not the same in many ways that object-oriented programming happens in other languages, okay? Because in JavaScript, it's almost like prototypal inheritance as opposed to classical inheritance that you're used to. So let's pull up an example here. So again, I'm starting off Visual Studio Code, which is our editor of choice. And I'm making a brand new folder on my desktop somewhere. So let's make a new folder. So again, right-click on your desktop or somewhere else, new folder. And then from there, it's the name of our course. Let's try that again. Name of our course, the semester, and it's lesson 7. We're going to say lesson 7 by itself for now. We may change this to lesson 7 part 2 on Wednesday. And then what you want to do with your Visual Studio Code is just drag and drop this over. Okay, and I'm starting like this for a second, and I'm not continuing with the last lesson for a reason, because I want to talk about some object-oriented concepts here without using heavier framework. And I've got some feedback that some people are still having challenges with connecting things with index.html and so on. So just a bit of a review and not much. Again, whenever I format my my folder structure, I want to add content, scripts, and assets. Those are the first folders. Now, if you have a problem like this with Visual Studio Code, just drag and drop your assets or the other folder outside so they're all on the same level. This is very important. Then add your index.html. Okay? Very, very straightforward. Again, and we're going to say HTML5 with Emmet. Okay, so this is going to produce this for you like we've seen before in other examples. And this will be just lesson 7. We'll say part 1 because I'm going to go back to part 2 in a second. I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so this is standard structure. In my scripts folder, I'm going to put a new file, app.js. In my content folder, I'm going to put a new file. That's app.css. Okay, they can be empty for now. It doesn't really matter when you connect, right? Did that not work? Oh, there it did. I'm just faster than my editor right now. When we connect, we want to put our CSS at the top. I've gotten some really weird emails saying, why don't you put your JavaScript at the top like we've been taught? I don't know who taught you that, but it's incorrect. So, what you want to do is typically you want to put your CSS at the top, and you can mark it with a comment, an HTML comment, which looks like this, CSS section or something like that. And then down here is where you want to put your JavaScript. So why down here? Okay, because I want to know, because people are, I'm not joking around. I got emails 11:30 on a Friday night saying, I'm just not sure what happened. There will be class on Wednesday. So there will be class. I'm not sure what happened, but I don't understand why my JavaScript is down here. I know, Professor, you're showing us JavaScript down here, but everything else I learn is JavaScript up here. Well, wherever you learn JavaScript is up here, doesn't always work properly. And the reason why we put it down here is why. Why do we want to put JavaScript? This could be a question on your test or even in an interview. Why do we want to include JavaScript closer to the bottom of the page, guys? Why? And why does it matter? Does anyone know? This is a question for you guys. If you know, check mark. And then, if you don't know, put an X. How about that? You don't even have to tell me. So everything is uploaded before. Okay. That's very close to the right answer. I'm just going to allow you to rename your stuff, Tiago. To avoid the upload late. It's not upload. Don't say upload. It's the reason why is because the page loads. Okay, this is the thing. It reduces loading time. No, it's the page. The page itself will not. You have to wait for the page to finish loading. And yes, if you have JavaScript that's broken near the top, it'll stop the page from loading. That can also happen, right? So, and absolutely you need to load CSS at the top. So CSS has to go first, then some content, your markup, and then finally JavaScript is the right way to do it. So you typically want to put JavaScript at the bottom of your section, unless you have some other kind of framework that's in play. Typically this is how it happens. So for the most part, I'm not saying always, but let's say for the most part, and there's always more than one way to do things, you want to connect your JavaScript here at the bottom. Okay, so that's where it belongs for us. Okay, so there's my app.js. And then some kind of body content in the top. Okay, let's just do it H1 that says, OOP test, which is what we're going to do here. And I'm starting this slow again because I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And I still think there are people that are, still quite don't understand how things work. Okay, so remember that your index.html and any other page that we make with HTML, these pages here are, I want you to think about them as the manifest, the thing that links everything else together. You don't have an index.html page, nothing links together. You don't have your JavaScript connected here, it won't link, right? So that's really, really important to do this and in this kind of order, right? Now we're not including Bootstrap or Font Awesome for this small example first. Okay, the first thing is first. Next, as a review, this is going to be on your test. I'm going to ask you to do something like an IFI, right, which stands for Immediately Invoked Function Expression, which we've talked about before. One of the ways to do it is like this, right? And if I see, just let you know, if I see in your code any kind of jQuery, which I never asked you to do, right? Or any code that comes from somewhere else that does not belong to you, right? And if I check it and it belongs to somebody else and you haven't okayed it with me, you're going to get 0, guys. I didn't ask you to do jQuery, never. So if I see jQuery inside your app, unless there's a good reason for it, you have a special effect that you added on or something like that that has no impact to what I'm doing, right? Then it's okay. But if it's something like it takes care of everything for you, jQuery, and we haven't talked about jQuery, where are you getting that information from? There's very specific cases where I would accept it. Most of the time I won't. All right, function start. We use the start function. We can call it whatever you like, initialize. And then down in here, it's window.addEventListener, and we're waiting for the page to load. That's the load event. And then we're triggering the start function. That's how it goes. Okay, so this basic structure is a safe way to do stuff. Could I do it without this? Absolutely. And I could just call start. I could even do it without the IFI. One thing that's missing here is use strict, which I highly recommend. Use strict. And the reason for this is it'll stop weird JavaScript effects. And the other thing we never want to use, and I'm also going to dock marks if I see this from you guys, is var. I don't want to see var. I've been talking about that since I met you guys week 4, and we're sitting at week 7. So I don't want to see var. If you've included var, anything in your code, you'll lose marks. Okay? In terms of how this works, this structure, this function here, notice how it lit up. And I mean lit up as in it changed color from a color coding perspective here. If I take this off and call it, I don't know, something else, right? Notice how it darkened. Look again. It lit up. This color change is because function start is actually referenced somewhere. It's referenced right here. So when the window loads, it's going to trigger the start function. That's what this means. This part right here is the callback function. You can write it inline, which means I can take this whole thing and put it inside here and get rid of the name, right? I could do it this way, function, okay? And instead of me having this close bracket, I could do this. That is acceptable, as well as this is acceptable with a fat arrow. So this situation here, I can do it this way or the other way, all right? If I was ever going to have just a single instance of my window loading, I could put everything inside this start function if I want, this little area right here. However, it's just easier and cleaner for us to see it as a named function, which means that I write it this way. You can also write a function we talked about last time. People have asked me questions about this too. If I said something like let's start, right, equal to function, that is also acceptable if I spell function properly. As well as, instead of just doing it like this, I could use the fat arrow function, which is also something that is acceptable. This is all good for you to use, this structure. Some people sent me weird JavaScript from, I don't know where they got it from, okay? And when I looked at it, I was like, okay, so what is this? Where, you know, or they returned to me. The other one was I got some examples from a number of people that were like, hey, look, Tom, this is what I'm giving you. Is this okay? And it's just my code. It's exactly my code. It's exactly everything. And there's nothing extra except for a picture of themselves, and that's it. And then all this stuff is in HTML, which is 0. That's not what I asked you guys to do. I asked you guys to, inject all your content, your text content with JavaScript strings, right? So that's something that you should have been able to do. So this is again, this is another way of doing it. But again, let's just be comfortable and go back to the way I showed you earlier, which is perfectly fine to leave it like this. There's nothing wrong with this kind of structure. But we're talking about object-oriented programming today, and remember how objects work in C# and classes. They work very similar to what we're going to see here in JavaScript, in that you make a class, right? I'm going to show you both ways, the old way, and I'm going to show you the new way, okay? And I'm going to use TypeScript to illustrate this very easily, okay? So I'm going to talk about TypeScript really briefly here, and then we're going to talk about it again near the end, okay? I think this is a really great way of learning it too. So I'm going to go up to typescriptlang.org. Okay, so follow me here, typescriptlang.org, okay? And there's other ways of doing it, so you can use Babel as well. But let's go to here for a second, typescriptlang.org. And I'm going to put this link inside of your stuff for this week. So new, we're going to go to create a link, and we'll go put TypeScript link, okay? So this, you can find it inside of eCentennial, and I should be making eCentennial available to you. How about that? Now you should be able to see it. Okay, so there we go. So TypeScript, you'll see the link to the video as well as intro to OOP. All this kind of stuff should be visible to you now. Okay, so TypeScript. There's something on TypeScript called Playground. You should be able to see that right here on the right. If you click on Playground, you'll see some very simple code on the left and some other code on the right. We're going to configure this to work properly. So first, I want you to get rid of this code on the left. It's going to get rid of the code on the right it's going to in a second. But before we go there, on the top, I want you to click or this configure down this little menu here. It's pulled down. Notice the target, ES 2017. I want you to change this to ES5, please. Okay, ES5. JSX none, module, you're going to do CommonJS, and language is going to be TypeScript. Okay. There's a bunch of all these other check marks. I want you to uncheck them. So no implicit any, I want you to uncheck, strict null checks, all this kind of stuff. Just uncheck all this stuff here for me, please. Always strict ES module and declaration. So no checks. Okay, so ES5 module type is CommonJS, language is TypeScript, nothing checked. Okay, that's your config. And now I want you to write stuff in a very simple way, just like you would in C#. So the way we write in C# kind of is like this: class, right? And then we write the name of the class, the person class, which is what you should be having in C#, right? Class person, curly brace. And then we start, defining some stuff. So take a look at this. This is the class person. This is old school way of writing starting to create a class. Okay, there's the newer way we're going to talk about too. Hey, look at what we have here. We have var, right? Why var? Even though I've told you not to use var ever, right? They do here, right? They do include it here. And why? Because older versions of browsers that still exist don't understand let and const. So that's why we use var. The only time that you'd ever use var is if, well, there's actually two ways. One, older browser, and the second one is if you're really trying to solve a problem and you can't solve it with let and const somehow, right? That would be the only other reason to use var. But take a look at this. Let's assume this instead of var is let. Okay? You have let your person equal to this. What is this, guys? Come on. What is this? What have I been showing you this whole time? And Arud doesn't know. An iffy. Thank you. Thank you, guys. You guys are watching and learning. Yes. Yes. I've been secretly giving you the structure that you need to create your class in the first place. The old school way. Just doing this is the conversion into the old way. Okay? Don't worry about what this is right now. For you, this is just class person with curly braces. But this structure right here is the structure of a class. Okay? So, let's go back to just knowing just this part. Let's go back. And, oh, by the way, notice two things here that we have to talk about. Person in caps here, and then person again in caps here. Notice there's a function within a function. Here's the iffy, this part, right? We saw this part before. Okay? But notice the iffy in this case, right? We have an extra bracket here, right? So the iffy doesn't end up like the bracket here. The bracket's on the outside. It's very close to the same structure we've been using so far. Very close. The next part is this return statement. Okay? Return person. So there's person on the outside and there's person on the inside. Okay? And we'll talk about what these things are in a second. Let's go back to our code for a second. So I want to make a person class the same way. Okay? Same way. Inside of this iffy though. So I start typing. And I create my iffy within the iffy. Hear me out. We're gonna separate this in a bit. Except instead of var, we're gonna use let. Let person equal to, let's make that iffy again. So again, it looks like this, right? And typically what we do is do something like this. The only difference between our typical iffy and this one is we take this other bracket here and move it on the other side here. Okay, that's the only thing that we do differently with a class. Okay, otherwise it's the same. Next, we use the brackets. This is our person space. Think about this as a closure. Nothing can escape here except for the person itself. This person itself, this is actually a reference to this iffy right here. This closure is what I want to talk about. When I say closure, think about it in your mind. It's like a black hole. Nothing can escape from there unless you expose it. It's hidden. It's locked into that little space. It's a scope that you can't get out of. All right? Next, we want to define the function person, just like it says here. Function person. It's a named function. And we use the same name. Why? Because this is our constructor. Remember, just like if I can spell properly, instead of Persion, it's person. This is our constructor, right? Right now, my constructor is private. If you think about it, there is no private and public in JavaScript, by the way, right? At least not traditional JavaScript. However, right now, think about your constructor as a private constructor because I haven't exposed it in any way outside of my my function. Okay, first part. Second part, we need to expose it. Otherwise, we cannot instantiate an object of type person. We need to return person. Okay, which person am I returning? Well, look what lights up. Look. Is it lit? No. But if I do this, it is, which means I'm returning this person, this constructor, an instance of this constructor. I'm returning outside of this function, which means person on the outside, which represents the class. So this is the class closure. That's what this is. This is the class closure right here. Okay? It's like a class iffy. It's like that. Right? This part right here, if I return something, that means that this internal function, which is a constructor, all right, this internal function is going to be returned outside of this closure. This person here represents a reference to this entire closure, this outside person. This person here represents the constructor for this closure. Okay, that's how it works. Now, this is the empty constructor, and in order for me to have elements in, like, as a person, remember that typically what we do in C# or another language, we might take two inputs. We might have a name and an age, right? But we don't have any data types we define with variables, right? We just know that we're going to take a name and we're going to take an age, correct? Like we normally would do in other things. Name, we're going to, in our minds, we think string. Age, in my mind, I think number, all right? So if I want to assign a local variable or an instance of name and age through the person constructor, then I need to use the keyword this. And it's going to look like this. This dot. Let's make it private, okay? Let's make it private. This dot underscore. And by the way, a lot of times what we want to define is variables with an M underscore for member variable underscore name. That means private name, the name variable. But however, I have to caution you that in JavaScript, this will be exposed because there is no private. Anything we expose outside of this is the way it's going to look. And I don't want to see M underscore name like this here. I don't want to see that. And we'll talk about how to fix this in a second. But for now, let's put this dot name, which doesn't exist. There is no name. I don't have name properties. I don't have that. But let's use it anyway. This dot name is equal to name, and this dot age is equal to age. And you're going to go, wait, Tom, I don't understand. Because name doesn't exist and age doesn't exist, but you're assigning the parameters that you're taking in from your constructor to these variables. And you're right. 100% you're right. But you're also not correct. Because unfortunately, the way it works in old JavaScript is as soon as you assign it, it exists. I create the property. This property here has been created as soon as I assign a value to it. I don't need to use let. I don't need to use var. I don't need to use anything. I just need to do this. As soon as I do this thing right here, I've just created a property called name and another property called age. It doesn't care what type it is. They could be strings or they could be numbers. It doesn't care. So it says something here. In my version of Visual Studio Code, it says, hey, by the way, buddy, you know, you might think you're really being good with this old JavaScript stuff, but you know, the constructor can be converted to a class declaration. That's good. It identifies this as a constructor. It identifies it as a constructor because this is inside of this. has that relationship. It's, they made Visual Studio Code smart enough so it detects what's happening here. Okay, great. So I've got a person and I've got a name and an age, and I want to create what we normally do in C# is I want to make a how would I like to put this? A method in C#. We're going to call them functions here in JavaScript, but I want to create a method. And the way to make a method is to call the person constructor. Think of it that way. The person prototype is really what we're calling, right? So first we need to use the keyword person. And then we have to use the keyword prototype, like this. Person.prototype. Okay, prototype means, hey, JavaScript, go to the person class, look at its prototype, think about it as almost like, the class itself. I'm referring to the class itself. In C++, it would be like doing this. Okay? I'm dereferencing the person. I've got my reference operator here in C++, and I'm saying, hey, this thing I'm making belongs to the person class. That's what this is. Okay? So then I'm going to say person.prototype dot, and the name that I want, for example, something like says hello. All right? Says hello is the function name, and that equals to a function. By the way, you can use fat arrow notation as well. Okay? So person.prototype says hello. Well, says hello doesn't exist, right? Well, now it does. As soon as I assign a function to it, says hello now is a function that returns something or nothing, right? In this case, it's a function that returns void because I don't return anything from it. Okay, if I had a return type here, it would return whatever I'm returning. Okay, the type. So here I'm going to say something like this: a console.log, and I'm going to say something I can use still. Notation that we normally would be using, right? So backtick is this lovely notation we can use. We can use curly braces to define what it is. This dot name as an example, right? This dot name says hello. Okay, so all this stuff is good. Semicolon. So this method notation. This is how you do it. All right. You have an anonymous function, and you assign a reference to the anonymous function into this notation, where person.prototype is like, hey, that means the class person, and says hello. Whatever you put here is the name of the function that you assign. If it doesn't exist, in this case it doesn't, it becomes created just like your properties. These are properties. This is how you do properties. Okay? Properties. They're not just instance variables. Okay, cool. There's your person class. All right? And to prove this is the way that it's done, I'm going to go back to typescriptlang.org and do that same thing. So the way you do it in TypeScript, and by the way, I have an underlying motive for doing all this the way I'm doing it. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. All right? But I would use the keyword constructor. Do it with me. And in the constructor function in TypeScript, right, I'm going to say that I have two private variables. Follow me here. In TypeScript, you can use private. I'm going to have one that's m_name. Okay? Here's name. Actually, you can even create properties, right? I don't think it does it here. But I can say private m_name, right? I can specify the type, which is a string. And I can say private m_age. I can specify the type, which is a number. Okay? And then what I want to do is I want to take two things in here. I can say, notice that, by the way, nothing happened on this side. Okay? And then I can say, I want to take name, which is a string, and I want to have age, which is a number. Notice that it ignored my types. TypeScript, the great thing about TypeScript is it has types like this. Anything after the colon denotes a type. So name, I'm saying it's a string. Age, I'm saying is a number. This is how you'd normally want to see it in C#. Here, I'm teaching you TypeScript. At the same time, we're doing object-oriented programming for a couple reasons. One, next semester when you do your COMP125 course, right, where you're learning advanced JavaScript, it's required to know TypeScript. And I'm teaching this kind of just in time, right? But don't worry about this. Even if you don't remember this now, you'll learn it as we go. The important part is this, how this looks. This is the old version of making a class in JavaScript. Okay, this part, the conversion. Again, how I did it, in the config, I went ES5, CommonJS, unchecked everything, okay? All right, cool, the constructor. Now we want to do getters and setters. And by the way, if you ever wanted to go to documentation about how to use TypeScript, this beautiful documentation here. I'm gonna control documentation, click on here. All right, I want to show you something. So under here, there's a handbook. And under the handbook, you can look at things like classes. So it talks about how to define a class. If you're ever, kind of concerned about how to do what I'm doing, you can totally define a class here. It talks about inheritance and blah blah blah. And one thing it talks about here as we go forward is getters and setters, which are accessors, right? That you've been learning about in C#. So here's your accessors, is what they look like, right? So right here. So use the keyword get, and then the name of kind of what you want to return, and the return type, and the set as an example, and what you're taking in, and then you want to set your variable here. So we're going to do that right now. So we need to use get and set TypeScript. We're talking still, okay? So again, up here. So these, if you were learning C# with me, right, would be your private instance variables or fields. That's what they would be, right? And then in here, you would have your public properties. Okay, this would be over here. And then you would have get and set. We want to use the get keyword to designate something that we want to return. For example, name, right? Which returns what? A string. Okay? And then inside of the name, we need to return, just like normal, this underscore, M underscore name. Okay? So notice that satisfies the requirements. Okay, take a look over here. What's happening, guys? This is this weird stuff going on over here. All right? And we're going to come back to this object defined property stuff because, my friends, this is the way you define property in old JavaScript, like this. And I say old as in ECMAScript 5 old, right? Not old as in like 1980s old. Okay? And then we're going to do the set name, and we're going to pass in something like new name, which is going to be ignored, by the way. And we're going to say that this dot underscore m underscore name is equal to new name. By the way, you can call this whatever you want. You can call this like value if you want. It doesn't matter what you call. If you want to use value because you're used to that in C#, you're perfectly fine. Or JavaScript, Java, same, right? So that is an important way of doing things. Now take a look how this is done. Get and set are still keywords that we would use in old JavaScript, right? We return, we set, okay? And then we set enumerable false but configurable true. Enumerable means, hey, can I loop through it? And configurable means, can I change them? Okay, can I change these? But the keywords are object, we're using the object superclass, define property, what property, for which class am I accessing? Well, the person prototype, that's what I'm accessing. What is the new name of the property? Name is the name I'm giving it. And then all this work. You can obviously tell that TypeScript is just easier than old JavaScript, right? We're going to see how it looks in new JavaScript in a sec. So here the constructor, we do the same thing. We're going to say this dot name, right? is equal to name, and this dot age, we don't have age yet, but we're going to get it, is equal to age. In order for me to, notice I get this little, I'll underline here, but it did it over here anyway. Look, it did it even though I said, like, it tells me there's something wrong here. This age does not exist. Here, JavaScript will just do what you tell it to do, right? We need to do this again for age, just like we normally would in C#. So get age, except this time age returns a number. We can say this dot return this dot m underscore age. Okay, and just like before, we said set age, some kind of value that we're going to set, which is of type number. And then we're going to say that this m underscore age is equal to value. Okay, that's typically what you would remember how to do stuff. And notice now I have two properties. I'm going to separate them for you. One that's here and one that's here. This is how you define properties in JavaScript, old way. We'll do this now in a second when I go back to thing. But this is how we do it, right? And then let's make that method. The way you do methods in TypeScript is just like we did it earlier, except this time we can use public and private. Public, so we'll say this is private methods, and these are public methods. This is a constructor. Okay, so we're defining a constructor there. Notice that these things are being defined down here. They don't have to be. You can define them wherever you want, but typically what you want to do is you want to have this constructor first, and then you want to have person.prototype. Okay, that's typically why these things are down here. Okay, and then under your public methods, we're going to have that says hello. Public says hello, right? We're not going to return anything, so we can say, if we're not returning something, we can just say void. We're telling the compiler, if you will. It's not really a compiler, it's an interpreter, or a transpiler. That's what we're called. We're going to transpile. It's like transport from Star Trek. Transpile from TypeScript to JavaScript. That's what we're doing here. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say that the console log backtick and then curly brace. And we're going to say that, now take a look what it's going to do in a second. It's a brilliant thing. This dot name, right, says hello. Okay. Notice what it did. A couple things happened. One, it said that cannot find name console. Do you need to change that in your target library? Well, console log worked okay over here, right? So what do I mean here? What do I want to use instead of console log? Going back to this, console log worked okay here. Look, I actually can copy paste from here, right, back to here. So what the heck? How come it's not working here and it's working over there? Right, well, don't worry about it. Leave this alone the way it is. There is no console for a second. In this particular case, the target library, try changing it says the compiler option to include DOM. Okay, so that's one thing we didn't do. So we're going to go through here, and this is the compiler option, right? And what we want is, we want to include, so it says always use strict, and then down, no emit, no lib, no strict, no unused, preserve, skip library checks, allow JS, declaration, experimental decorators. I don't think I see that here. Maybe they added that thing recently, but anyways, maybe I don't see it. But it should, yeah. One thing that's missing is there is no DOM, because the language here is just TypeScript, right? By the way, if I change this language to JavaScript, we'd have a bunch of errors, right? It would actually not transpile like this, right? But if we go back to TypeScript for a second, now it's good. Now we're good to go, okay? I'm just pointing this out to you so you see. That's the only thing that's missing, this part here, which is it doesn't know what console is. And what does console come from anyway? Right? Does it come from the window? Right? And of course, window isn't even known because here we just not included it, right? So it's just a configuration. So strict null checks I don't care about for now. But one thing that's missing here is this idea of DOM. You don't have a DOM check here. But again, this is just an example, guys. So don't go too crazy. I don't see it. Okay, but look at this. This is your JavaScript, and look at what's happened here. Person.prototype says hello. It's exactly what I showed you guys, except the console log changed to old school concatenation as opposed to new school interpolation. Interpolation means we inject inside of this template string something that we want to put in. Here we add, to this property, we want to add a name. All right, so I want these properties, objects. Remember, it's object.define property, and then the name of the class followed by what property name you want to give it. This is what you want to give the property. Okay, so again, going back to this, we're still so far so good. And we have name and age. We're going to make properties the way we think we were going to make them. Let's try making the properties up here instead of down there, right? We're going to use the object keyword. Object is the superclass of all objects in JavaScript, just like object is the superclass of all objects in C# and the superclass of all objects in Java. Object, the object superclass. Dot, okay? Define property, open bracket. It tells us what we need. The object that we're targeting, okay? The property that we want to create, okay? That's what it tells us. And the name. That's the property name. So let's make the object that we're targeting. Person.prototype. Okay? The property name. What's the property name that we want? The property name is name. Okay? And then the attributes that go here. Okay? These are all the attributes of the property that go in a list. Just like we did here. Okay, and this has to be in curly braces. So curly braces define the list of attributes. So we say, okay, cool, curly braces, right? That's going to hit the requirements. Okay, guys, if you're freaking out, don't freak out. We're going to go through this a number of times. Next, what do we need? The first part is, if you notice, a get or a set. If I only have a get and no set, then this property is read only, just like it is before. So we need to use the get keyword, followed by, like it says here, function. All right. And inside the get function, let's make it look nice. And Visual Studio Code will do this. Get must return something. So we're going to return something. Return, right, this dot name, right, because that's what we've defined. If I wanted to change this now to make it private, I would say, I would encode it like this: m_name, 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 or we'll use capital N for name this time. Okay, because this is a new property that's going to exist. Okay, so that's the first change. m_name is what we're returning, just like it says here. We're returning this thing. The next one is the set function, just like we showed you before. So now we do get, and then there's a comma separating this. This is one element of a list. Think about this as your area there, right? So you're making a list of these properties, these things inside. We're configuring this property. That's what we're doing, all right? So we're going to go comma, right? Set. And this time it's a function. Sorry. It's a function that's going to take a value. Again, you can call this whatever you want. I've just chose to make it value just to be on the same vein as you are when it comes to C#. Okay? And then I'm going to set it. I'm going to say that this m_name is equal to value. Okay? That's how we do it. That's how we configure a property. Yeah? So get and set for this property that we're defining, this name property. Okay? Next, we have to configure if it's enumerable. So we say enumerable, and we say it's false. But configurable we have to say that it is true. We can configure it, but we can't enumerate it. And there's other ones. If I go comma and control space, you can see that there's value and writable. Okay? Those are the typical ones. And we're going to look at the documentation online in a second. All right, so this defines the name property. So this is the name property. And this name property, by the way, right, is internal to person. But we've attached it to the person prototype. Remember, the person prototype refers to the class itself, person prototype. Okay? So far, so good. M_name. But if I said M, instead of M, if I said name, right, like this is also good now. Because if I hover over a property, it says, hey, it's a property. Name. Name. Property. It detects. We're good. Let's do it again for age. So we'll say, this is the age property. Okay? And we'll do the next part. Object dot define property. The class we're hitting. The object, is the object in which to add or modify the property. We're looking at the person. Think about this as the class. Person dot prototype. And then the name of the property, which is age. Some curly braces, please, which are going to define some values for this particular thing. I usually like to break it out like this, just so that way you can see the property nicely spaced. You don't have to configure it this way. If this is ugly to you, do it your way, right? Then a getter, right, that returns something. Return this. We're going to make this again, just like we did over here, age. We're going to call it M underscore, right? M underscore. And we'll come back to this in a second. So we'll say M underscore age. All right, that's what we're going to do. Okay. Notice I'm saying M underscore age, but back in TypeScript here, notice that there's just name and age. There is no M underscore anything. I can call them internally what I want, but here we're gonna have to choose something different. And so notice what I have to do is, even though I call them internally, these are private values that are going to be holding the value. Okay, here they have to be whatever we called it, age. Otherwise, it will not be available to us. So M underscore age, right, and then set, just like we did before, the function. Okay, and we have to take in a value for this setter, and then we're going to say that this M underscore age is equal to value. Okay, we also want to make it enumerable false, because we're not going to loop over it, and configurable true. Property for age done. Is it ugly? Syntax. This. Hell yeah, it's ugly. But you need to know the ugly part before you can know the pretty part. Otherwise, you'll not know what's going on in the background with JavaScript. This is what's really going on in the background with JavaScript when you define a property, even if it's the new JavaScript. That's what's happening, right? Okay, so we've got all this part done. And now it comes down to testing. One thing we also have to know for sure, right? We can know for sure is that it returns person. Notice I haven't done anything else. I haven't kind of pushed through anything. They're killing me with email. I haven't done anything different here than what I've done here. The only thing is I've just reordered the define property so it's at the top, because typically what I like to do is I like to define my properties first, then the constructor, then methods. Okay, so in my start function now, again, this is the class. Okay, this whole thing is the class, right? This one. From here down. In my constructor now, in my start method, because this is what I want to get back to, I want to instantiate an object of type person. So I'm going to say that. So we're going to use let. Okay, and we're going to say that let Tom is a person, right? Equals to a new person. I can use the new keyword just like normal. And if I open it up, it asks me for age, name, and age, because that is the way I've asked for it here, name and age. Okay? So I can say that my name is Tom, and my age, we're going to make an age up because this is not right, 30. Yay, I like that one. And then I can say, to test it, Tom dot says hello. You look, code hinting tells me that it's okay, right? Now when I run this thing, okay, when I run this thing, and I'm going to do that by pressing Control backtick, and I'm going to type in light server. If I did everything correctly, then we should see, and I'm just going to pull this to the side for a second, and I'm going to pull this one to this side. We should see what I'm hoping to see. Okay, so inspect. If I go to console, Tom says hello. Don't worry about the favicon. Tom says hello. Hey, mission accomplished. Old way. Okay, the old way. The ugly way. Now you know how to make everything that you, all your dreams come alive in JavaScript the same way you do in C#. Okay, maybe not right. Maybe that's not true. But maybe soon. Okay, let's try this again. There we go. Right. Let's go over this one more time so that we're sure that you guys know what you're doing. So one, you must make, this is step one. We'll call this step one in the video. We want to create a class closure. Okay, that's step one. We need that part. Without a class closure for the iffy, we don't have a class. All right, this is old school way of doing it. Remember? We're going to show you the new school in a sec. Next, step two. I always like to think about a constructor as step two. Without a constructor, you don't have a class. So this is step two. Create a constructor. Okay? Step three. You need some kind of properties or something, right? There's two ways to do it. Here, where you define the name of the property that you're going to return out, as an example. Or you can use the getter and setter long form, which I recommend. This is going to keep in mind that you're going to use private instance variables, which are these, that you can't access from outside, and public properties, which is this, the name that you define. That's the outside name of this instance variable right here. This is representative, an alias to this. But remember, these are functions, so I can do more than one thing in here as opposed to just one thing. Okay, so name and age. To make a method, right? And I would say honestly that this would be probably like step three. We'll make properties. And there's two ways to do that, which we talked about. Step three, create some, or we'll say define. Define some properties. Right? Step four, define some methods. These are methods. And then finally, you must return person. If you don't return person, it becomes like a private constructor. So we'll say this is the final step. Step 5, you must return the person constructor. What this does is this binds with this. This age binds with this. If we don't return this out, this part, none of that works. Okay? So that is your class. That is your class. We're not talking inheritance yet. We're just talking about, I'm just making a class. Right? Questions so far. Is constructor the only way to define fields? Yes. Unless you just do it this way. If you do it this way without the defined properties, then explicitly just public instance variables that you're making. There is no information hiding if you do it the other way around. Okay? So those are the steps for you. Questions around this? Okay, ugly, right? Ugly. Ooh, is it ever ugly? Okay, let's take a look. Let's go back to our let's go back to TypeScript for a second, right? TypeScript. Look at it. That's not ugly. That's ugly. Nice. Not nice, right? And you know what? JavaScript has improved. JavaScript doesn't look like this anymore. This is old school JavaScript, like we talked about before. There's the new school JavaScript, the ECMAScript 6 and beyond, all right? And if I change this configuration from ECMAScript 5, the old way, this, by the way, fully compatible with old browsers, okay? And sometimes you need to go there and do it this way, okay? With the new way, let's go ECMAScript 2015. Never mind the rest. Just ECMAScript 2015, which is ECMAScript 6. If I did this and convert, now it looks like this. And if you notice, it's almost exactly like TypeScript without the types. Yeah? We still have getters and setters. This is the new way of doing it. Get, set. This is actually valid JavaScript, right? We now also have this. But one thing that's missing, if you notice, is I don't define my types here like I normally would do at the top of my code, right? I don't need to do that. Okay? It's important to distinguish these things, right? So I don't need to do this. No problem, right? And if I want to add additional things, like for example, I can add always strict, right? Then use strict comes into play here. It writes the class for me, guys. If ever I ask you to write classes, and if you can't remember how to do it, use TypeScript. TypeScript will code the way, and I mean, you have to know how to do it this way, and the documentation is clear. But then you can do it this way. Just it's almost exactly the same, right? Notice that the keyword changes from using name, the name of the person here, it changes to constructor. We need to use constructor as the actual keyword now that exists in ECMAScript 6 and beyond, which means ECMAScript 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and whatever else. ECMAScript next, ES next, right? So that you need to use constructor, the keyword constructor, okay? Getters and setters, they're fairly new, and they work the exact same way pretty much that you see here with no data types, okay? So there's no data types, but the rest is the same. So let's convert. This is old school, right? And we're going to comment all the old school stuff out. Okay, here. And now we're going to do new school. All right, new school instead of this. Let's just do it from the beginning, from the top. Okay? Again, I want to make a class called person. This is real. Inside my class called person, I need a couple things. I need a constructor. I need some methods, right? My constructor is going to look exactly like that, constructor. Oh, I also need some properties. Sorry, I forgot that too. We'll put the properties here. Okay. So I define my constructor. What I'm going to take in, I'm going to take a name and an age. I want to say that when I define my properties, I'm going to make getters and setters. So I'm going to say get name, and this is going to return m_name. I'm also going to set name with a value. I've created my name property. Okay? And now I'm going to make my age property. I'm doing this both times, guys, because I want you guys to hammer it in your head a little bit. Okay, and then finally, once I've defined these things, in fact, I'd probably want to do all the properties first before I even do the constructor now, right? Because that makes more sense to me. And now I'm going to go, notice it comes up. Okay, methods. You don't have to use public or private, but you're just going to say something like the name of the method, right? And then what it does. Remember that methods are just for behavior. Done. Class in ECMAScript 5. Oh, sorry, ECMAScript 6. 2015, 26. Nice? Nice, nice. Much nicer than this. Right? Way nicer than this. Crazy this. Nice this. Right? And now, does it work? That's the most important part. Save. And let's see what happens, right, with this. Do I have a problem? Which is important to understand what I did wrong if I did something. All right, it says age is not defined, right? Age is not defined here. So if I say save, right? This age is equal to age. What did I do wrong? Age, set age, get age, set age. And let's take a look at my TypeScript playground to help me out. Get name, get age, set age. I think I did everything right. Value, m underscore, blah, 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 blah. And like that. Yeah, so this is where order matters. This is where our order matters, which is kind of weird because I wouldn't have expected it. Unless I somehow messed up, which doesn't look like I did. It basically tells you where they are. It says that person set age as age is on JavaScript number 92, and it says that age doesn't matter. This is the error I made. So see, it does. That's what I made a mistake. It actually points out the error to me, and now we're good. It says m name is not defined. M underscore name. See, m underscore name is equal to value. Return m underscore name. Okay. So it says m underscore name is not defined. And we've got use strict, right? You've got use strict in here. And it tells you it's number 76. So 76 is trying to return something that doesn't exist, right? And says hello, app.js 105. It says person.says hello, person.says hello, right? Get name as name, right? But what the real error is this error here. Uncaught reference error, m name is not defined. So what about if we shifted things around and we put our constructor first, right? Wow, man, this is crazy the amount of email I'm getting today compared to normal. What if I took this constructor and I took it away and I went up here to this area right here before the properties and just typed it in, right? Yeah, Duolingo. Then does it make a difference, right? Well, the answer is not really, right? So name is name, and then again, if I go back to TypeScript, my playground here, let's check to see if I weirdly did something wrong. So this.name, this.age, return. Oh, I see the error. See? The this keyword. So it wasn't the actual order that mattered. Let's undo that. Put it back to where it was. Because I liked it down there. I was like, maybe order does matter. I don't know. I don't think so with JavaScript, but maybe they've changed something. But no, it's this. It's me being dumb. This.mem.name. And the same thing I did it all here, but I didn't do it up here. Haha. Yes, undefined says hello. Undefined says hello. Okay, that's interesting. I shouldn't get undefined says hello because I'm taking in, I mean, at least it triggered. We still got errors because I'm getting some kind of weird error. But it says, okay, I'm getting a new person, Tom. I'm passing in Tom, and somehow Tom is getting lost. All right. All right, cool. So age, that's cool. Age, value, name, name is value. Return this name. Return. Okay, cool. So that says undefined. That's not a good thing, right? Typically, we don't want to see undefined says hello, right? Okay, so that's interesting. Let's check up our TypeScript playground and see what I did wrong. So, oh, by the way, what you could do to test it, you can also test. I have to also say this. You could test out that TypeScript here as well, but literally just defining it as line by line. You can say something like, okay, well, let Tom is equal to a new person, pass in Tom, and the age that I want to do there, like this, right? And you can see that it's exactly how we had it before. We can now say that Tom.says hello, right? Tom says hello. And if I go back to Tom says hello, new person, right? It says person constructor. We're all good to go so far. Notice I didn't have to do a return type with this style, right? We didn't do a return type here either. Says hello is here, right? And let's just make sure we got everything correct. I'm going to check the properties in a second. So again, I'm just going to go straight. Name, return this m name. Okay. Name, set name, value. This m name is equal to value. Nice. Age, this dot m age. Set age, value, it's equal to value. So all this is correct. And then says hello, this dot name with a capital N says hello. But remember, this can't work until it's been defined. So it might be an order issue. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I'll save that. And I'll go back to this. And we're still going to say still undefined. Let's see what we get when we actually run the TypeScript stuff. So to run the TypeScript stuff, you can actually try it right here. Right? So you want to execute by clicking this run button. So what run does is it says code ran. Okay? Code ran. And the way to do this, if I go to inspect, so if I want to inspect this stuff, right? And by the way, it says things like I want to connect, right? You can connect online and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, if you ever go back, it transpiles everything for you. It remembers. It keeps everything here. So this is all good. You can export. There's a lot of really cool things you can do here. You can change your theme if you like dark theme instead, which I always like dark theme, just better than light theme in general. I think it's easier on the eyes, right? But yeah, all these things are good to go. Like you can, it says run and the code ran. And what I can do is I can inspect here. And if I go to console, you can say Tom says hello, and there's no problem. It says console was cleared. Tom says hello, right? So something is wrong with ours compared to what we've done here with TypeScript. By the way, do I trust TypeScript? Absolutely. Did I make a mistake? Chances are, right? So let's go back to this. And let's move that back. Let's move that constructor. Well, there you go. Where's the constructor? I probably deleted it by accident. All right, let's put it back. So that's okay. We're just going to do it again. So again, properties first, then the constructor. See, I told you something went wrong. It was not TypeScript, it was me, right? And then name and age. It's not a big deal. We can type this 10 times today. This dot name is equal to name. This dot age is equal to age. All right. And let's move this over. So over, we'll go back here, we'll look at here, and we're good. Okay. Are you with me? We have been telling me. Yes, thank you. I know. I haven't looked over there for a second. I'm trying to figure it out on my own. I'm glad that you're looking though. That's fantastic that you're figuring it out, and I haven't. Right? Which means you guys are paying attention. That's awesome. You guys are awesome. Thank you. All right. So, yeah. I mean, I think this is pretty clear. And if you guys are picking this up and you guys are saying, "Hey, professor, there's a problem. Your constructor is missing," it's okay. This is fantastic for you guys. That means you're getting it. Right? This is how it's worked. Okay. Now, we've done the basics for our class. But guys, we never want to include classes inside of the same file, like app.js. Let me put this up on GitHub first of all too, just to make sure that we're clear, right? So first, let's go to github.com/Centennial, just in case you want to check this out for yourself and try it out. I think it's an important piece. So again, people had problems with GitHub too. They're like, can't push to GitHub. 1, make it public. 2, don't touch any of this stuff. Don't add readme or gitignore or nothing. Literally just put public. That's all you have to put. Understand, under your own account, not my account. Okay? You can't modify my account and try and push to me. You have to only push to you. Right? And the reason sometimes you're having a problem is you've duplicated my repository and you're trying to push back to my repository. You can't do that. You can only push to your repository. Okay? So here, repository name, we're going to call this COMP125, again in M2020, and then it's lesson 7. And we'll make this part 1 because I know I'm going to do part 2. Okay, there's part 1. I'm going to create my repository now, and it's going to give me steering instructions on how to connect things. I only need all this stuff to do. Now, I can do this with my terminal, my integrated terminal. So control backtick to pull up my terminal. I can click this plus, which gives me another terminal window. And I can do git init. That initializes my git repository. Git add dot adds everything to the staging area. Git commit -m, right? That puts a snapshot, a name to the snapshot. Initial commit, I'm going to say. GitHub likes to use first commit. First commit or initial commit, it's the same to me. It doesn't matter. Next, I've made a commit. Now the next part, I'm going to follow these last 2 lines of code. I'm going to actually literally copy paste them. Copy from here, right click here, and then press enter. And if everything went well, and if you configured your GitHub locally on your machine, it's going to push it to your Git repository online right now. And if I refresh my screen, then boom, we have everything on GitHub. That's how long it should take, guys. There's no magic to it. If I was to do something like this, like add a readme, and you need to pull it first before you can do anything else. I can't add something else and then try and push something remotely. Like if you're working with somebody else, you can't have them push something and then you push something. That's not how it works. You have to be in sync with both the remote and with your local machine. For example, if you're working with 2 machines, you have a laptop that you have at home and you have a laptop at your friend's house, and you want to work together, you got to pull your stuff first, and then you can push. And when you get home, you have to pull your changes, and then make some changes, and then push. You can't push together. It doesn't compile by itself. It doesn't figure things out. You have to keep in sync the way I've been showing you. Okay, so now that this is up to date, as an example, we have our little repository, except it's pretty crappy, right? And it's pretty crappy because I have my class in the same file as my, let's think about this as main, if you will, right? So if you think about this, I've got like a class inside of my IFE, and it's right here. And I'm also, this is like, think about this as my start function as like main. I don't need to have my class here. I can rename it. I can put it somewhere else. I need another file like I normally would do in C#, right? Let's do that. Let's make a new file. We'll call this the person.js file. Okay? Person.js. It's empty. Yeah? All right. I like it. And what I want to do here is there's going to be 2 flows for this. Okay? I want you to bear with me while I do this. This is going to be a good thing for us to do. All right? First, I want to cut and paste everything from my class. This says hello class. Let's cut and paste everything. Cut. Go here to the class. Cut it. I'm going to go to my person File, and paste. Question, can I use it? Right now, can I use it? This folder is created from scratch, not copied, so no origins are removed. Okay. Can I paste it? Can I use it? What do you think? Can I use my person class in my app.js? Is it yes or no? Who thinks yes? Check mark. Okay. You need to reference it. Steve, you're awesome. Steve, you're awesome that you said that. You need to reference it. That's excellent. And you know why you need to reference it, guys? He was the first guy. If I could give you a prize, Steve, like an award, I would. All right? You can't use it, even though I can see it here, right? I can see it here. And I don't want to use this part, okay? I want to delete this part now. This is all the steps that we did for the old school JavaScript, which we don't need to look at right now. All right? Yes, I can do this, but it's never going to work. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm not going to do anything yet. I'm not going to reference it like Steve says. Just let's make it work and see what happens. So if I go to my file now, so I'll go back to this. Oops. Oh. I go back to this, and I look at this. I'm going to go, wah, person is not defined. And you're going to go, wait, I did everything Tom said. It should work, right? I mean, you know, I did everything. I literally just copied it into another file, and you have to think to yourself, wait a minute. This is not Java. This is not C#. What is our manifest? It's the index.html. You cannot use a file unless it's referenced. And it has to be in the right order, guys. Okay? This is without using some kind of, like something like Webpack or anything like that. Okay? So there's no module loader or some kind of loader program. This is just straight JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript as we like to call it. All right. So the way to use it is, in order for app.js to have knowledge of person.js, it must be loaded before. Okay, that's very important. So that means you have to make another script reference. Okay, and you have to say something like /scripts/person.js. What this does in the browser's cache, okay, the browser, when it's interprets the file, it goes through line by line, and it injects, anytime you have a link, it injects CSS. Anytime you have script, it injects JavaScript. So think about this. It's injecting the class first before it's being used here. That's the right way to do it. Okay? If I did this and save, okay, now we're good to go. That's it. You just have to link it beforehand. You have to add it in before you use it. Okay? If you did this, guys, you know everything about object-oriented programming that most people know. Okay? I mean, it's that simple. Quoting our guys from Apple, right? Let's take a look at a couple of other things now to make it more complex, though. See, there's a problem with this now, right? I mean, I can literally do something like, let, Ryan equal to a new person, and it's going to say name and age, right? Name and age, right? So I can say something like Ryan here on the command line, right? And the name is like, he's 20, he's like, a little younger, somewhere around your age, right? And I can say that Ryan dot says hello, right? And it's going to say Ryan says hello. I can do that here. But that's not, maybe that's not what you want. Maybe what we need to do is, what if I have lots and lots of classes, like tons of classes, not just one, but I have 10. Do I want all the classes to be defined here? What if I can't find them, right? Well, I need to bundle them together somehow, right? Nushik says, to link it, is it temporary? But it will not be written on your JS file, will it? Okay, I'm going to read some of these questions that have come up. Folder was created from scratch, not copied, so no origins removed. Good, good. To link it, is this temporary, but it will not be written on your JS file. I'm not sure what you mean, but no, you need to do this. If you don't save it, then it won't be here. If that's what you mean, maybe I missed the conversation. Anyways, the idea here is once it's linked, this person class, I can do whatever I want with it. But what if I have something else? What if I have another class and another class and another class and another class? I need almost like some kind of namespace. Okay, and this is where JavaScript still falls short. JavaScript, my friends, does not have a namespace. Okay, and that's the one thing that I'm hoping that in the next version of JavaScript, ECMAScript next, it's going to have namespacing, because that will be very helpful. So how do we fix it? Well, let's see what TypeScript would do. So go back to TypeScript and let's make it big. Well, we want to use namespace. Okay, and I want you to watch over here when I do it. Okay, because this is the key to this. And let's suppose I have a lot of classes that I want to use. And maybe I have some kind of namespace. Like for example, and usually namespace is, like we talked about before, in C# or in Java, is just a way of containerizing or creating a box around your classes with a special name, right? I want to access the namespace first, and then it's going to give me all the classes that are inside of it, okay? So what if I called my namespace objects, okay? All my objects that I have. So I could use the keyword namespace here, okay? Namespace. And the keyword namespace, and then the name that I want to call my namespace, objects. Okay. And now, so far, do you see any changes? The answer is no. But as soon as I take my class, which is the person class, and just the person class, not this part, and I cut it out, and I go in and put it in my namespace, suddenly it does something else. What does it do? Well, I'm just pointing this out to you because now we have a bit of an error, right? This works. So what it's done is it's taken the class, and our namespace is actually a funky iffy again. Here's another iffy. Okay? Except for this. This is weird. Okay? I'm just putting it out there so you can see what this does. In TypeScript, in order for me to use my class outside of the namespace, because now it's locked in, my namespace is in here and can never escape, I need to use the export keyword, like this. And now it's accessible. In order for me to make my class person work in TypeScript, I need to use the namespace followed by the dot and then the person and then the name of the object that I want to create. So example will be objects dot person. Objects is the container, the namespace. Person is the class. This is how it would work, and this is what you actually see in C# as well. Okay, except that C# has using statements at the top. Imports basically is what happens with C#. Here we're not. Here we're just using explicit. I'm using the objects. In C# you might have the system namespace, system dot, and whatever it's called, right? And here we have objects, objects dot. We can call this, by the way, whatever we want. We don't have to call it objects. I've called it objects because, well, I don't know another name that might suit this one right now. Okay? So that's what this is. Objects, person. Person is the class, objects is the namespace. Okay, cool? But look at this. This is what we need to replicate, guys. We need to replicate this. Forget var. Okay, it's not, I don't care about the var part. Okay? I want to create something called I want to create a variable called whatever the namespace is going to be, and that's going to hang out on top. Okay, so let's do that in here. Okay, so I'm going back to my person, and we're going to stop here after this. Okay, so I know there's going to be questions, and you guys aren't telling me the question because you guys don't talk to me unless I'm not watching, and then you're talking to me and I'm not watching, and it's my fault. Okay. But what we want to do here at the top of the class is do a couple things. Number one, use strict. Every file should have use strict. It's gonna give us more error checking. Okay, so it's important to have that in place. Okay, next we need to use the name of the namespace. So name of the namespace or module. Sometimes we want to call it a module. So we want to name it. We're going to say let and the name of the namespace, which is something like objects. Once I put this here, even if I don't want to define anything, right now it's undefined or any. Don't worry about that. Okay. Then we want to we'll say define the name of the namespace or module. So that's let objects. Next, I need an iffy. Guys, look. What is this again? Another iffy. An iffy around the iffy. Okay, that's what it is. Right? So here's an iffy. The class, remember this way we did the new class person? Class person ends here, guys. Right? That's what the class person is. So this doesn't change. But now we're using the iffy pattern again, because it always makes sense to use the iffy pattern. Except where I pass in a reference to my module name, objects. Okay? I pass it in. So here's the objects out here, and I pass it in, and then what I'm doing is I'm attaching the person. I'm attaching the person, right, to the objects module. That's what I'm doing, and I'm doing it on the fly. So what's happening is it's creating the person reference and attaching it to the objects container. I'm using I'm kind of like, you know, raising my eyebrows because that's not really exactly what's happening. But let's just assume, all right? Okay. Back to this. Iffy. You should guys know how to do this now. Passing in objects. Okay? Open bracket, close bracket. Sorry. Open curly brace, close curly brace. Right? And normally what we would do is, we would do this, right? But remember the iffy the way we want to do it? I want to do this. Is it? Let's take a look. Yes. Okay? So that's the first part. Then everything comes in here. This part goes in there. Objects. Now we want to attach the person class to the objects in order for me to let it come out. Okay, so we're going to say something like this. We're going to take this class. Make sure that it's correct. Yes. Cut it out. Put it inside the iffy. Okay. Now it's locked inside of there, and I need to unlock it or expose it. And the way to do that is to use return. Well, just like it says here, objects.person is equal to person. So instead of return, we're going to say objects.person. Doesn't exist, by the way. This doesn't exist. Object.person, and I hover over it, it's like, doesn't know what it means, right? Is equal to person, capital P. Now if I hover over, we can see it's still nothing, because this person here is the class person here. That's what it refers to. I'm getting a reference to the class, and I'm storing it in a new property of the object's container. It doesn't exist. This property doesn't exist. But as I'm assigning it, just like we did with this.person, that's why I did that old school thing. When I assign it, I create it. When I assign it, I create it. This doesn't exist, but when I assign it, I create it. This little light bulb comes on too. It says show fixes. Extract constraint and close scope. Extract function and global scope. I'm good. Leave it alone. It knows something's going on. Next, the tricky part. This part down here. This part so far hasn't been that tricky, but this part coming up is tricky. What the heck does this mean? Okay, I'm going to copy paste this one and I'm going to talk about it. So in here, it's going to look like this. Whoa, huh? What? I don't get it. Well, this is part of the iffy that you guys haven't used yet. Okay? Well, this part you haven't used either, right? Think about this as the function definition. The function definition takes in an object called something called objects. I have objects and I want to pass it in. But I'm not passing it in the way you think. I'm calling the object by itself, and I'm using this round bracket stuff to pass in the object and call itself. Call this part here is the function call right here. This is the function call piece right here. So it's like I'm invoking, it's a self-invoking function. Here is the function with the declaration of what the signature is. The signature takes some kind of object. That's what it takes. Notice if I hover over, it says curly brace, objects, right? And if I go down here, I invoke either an empty object, which is undefined, this one, or I make objects an empty. When I put curly braces, this is, by the way, is another way, we're talking about object-oriented programming, this is another way of defining an empty object. This is called object notation. I'm going to go back and talk about this in a sec. So, and then I use these two little things here, these little pipes. This means or. Either it's going to be this, or it's going to be that. And what this means is, if this is already defined, take this. If it's not defined, make it an empty object, and now I can start attaching things to it. That's what it means. This is your closure, my friend. So this objects now is now a namespace. And the way to use it, just like we did online, is inside my app.js. Instead of doing this, which makes no sense anymore, I need to use objects.person. And I'm not going to get code hinting. I'm not getting code hinting. But the way to check is to save, make sure everything's saved, and go back out to our lesson, and do I say hello? The answer is yes. To check that I'm getting the latest version, I can go to sources, and I can go to scripts, and I can see both those scripts, app.js, which is just this little part, and person.js, which includes both the namespace as well as the class inside of it. So why do I care about doing it this way? Why not just expose the class and be done with it? Why not make it easy, are you going to say to me, Tom? Why? Why make it so difficult? Why? Well, it comes down to this. Now I can do something that looks like this. I can say that let Ryan equals to a new objects.person, and I can see a list of all the things inside the objects namespace. Whereas before I'd have to hunt for what these things are. I have no idea how many classes I have here. They're all over the place. And that's one. Second thing is my class person is hidden inside of a namespace, so it's not exposed unless I call it, right? And it's not going to clash with anything else. So objects.person, I can now get my constructor name and age, Ryan, and let's say 20. And I can simply say Ryan.says hello, and we're good to go. Complete. That is how I want you guys to think about your classes. Can you remember everything? The answer is probably not. How do you get help? The TypeScript playground, my friends. This is the way you're going to use from now on. When it comes to classes, you're going to go here. You're going to type stuff in TypeScript. Again, lots of documentation on this side of the house, which tells you how to make a class. And then simply, you can create it. You can always remember how to do it properly this way with ECMAScript 6. And if you want to do it from a compatibility perspective, if you're an employer, you're working for someone and says, Tom, I wanted to make it work for, IE 5 or something crazy, right? Okay, then go back over here and change this from ECMAScript 2015, change it to ES5. And when I do that, it converts nicely, by the way. Nothing else changed. Notice that the namespace didn't change. It stayed here like this. And if I want to go even further back, right, I can go to ECMAScript 3, which is like, I don't know, like early JavaScript. Okay, and you can see now we're going to have some issues. Okay, we're going to have some issues because unfortunately there's some things in ECMAScript 3 that just do not match up. Like it doesn't understand how to do these kinds. Access are only available when targeting ECMAScript 5 and higher. Okay, because these defined properties don't work. Okay, unfortunately they just don't. We'd have to take all this stuff out, okay, and then just use this, and then it would work. They would just not be properties anymore. Okay, I'm just letting you know so that you get it. So you don't say I know how everything about. Tom says I know everything about stuff now. I know everything, right? No, you know a lot already, but just by going through this video. Now, what about if ECMAScript 2020? This is the latest stuff. What if I go here? Is there any changes that happen over here? And the answer is no. Not anything cosmetic that you can see on the front end. How about that? There's some stuff. There's other functions that have been added to ECMAScript 2020, so-called the new toys, right? That we can add in to play with JavaScript. So other things, other functionalities, other ways of looping and iterating. Different kinds of collections and stuff that you can use, and ways of looping through collections, but for the most, and different operators, but for the most part, it's exactly the same. One thing to note one thing you can't do with JavaScript, and I got to put it out there for you guys, is you cannot do operator overloading. Operator overloading in JavaScript doesn't work. You can do method overloading. Yes, you can do that with using this methodology, and you can create enums. Enums are going to be really funny looking over here, but you can do it, but you can't do operator overloading for now. I wish we could. That would be an awesome thing. So I have two things I wish from JavaScript. If the JavaScript gods are out there, one is operator overloading. I would love to see that in JavaScript. That would make my my life so much easier. And also, the other thing that I like a lot is namespacing or some kind of module pattern. It's getting there. There's HTML5 has a module pattern, and if you look at caniuse.com, and if I type in module, as an example, you can see that they're working on it. They're working on a dynamic import for JavaScript, the module keyword. All right. So notice that there is compatibility. IE is incompatible, Opera Mini incompatible, and the latest version of Firefox and Chrome 83 is compatible, right? So that's pretty cool. The import keyword, dynamic import. The other one is modules via the script tag, which might be happening. Something that looks like this. All right. So script type is equal to module. That's really cool. And what this would do is it would add a module, and you can see that again as of Chrome 83 and Edge 83. Edge uses the same engine as Chrome anyway in the latest version. Firefox 78 and so on. It does give us compatibility, and 91.06% users in the world globally can use this kind of pattern. But we don't want to have 96% of users. We want a 91. We want higher than this. And that's typically why we don't incorporate this stuff. Like, look, this is 89%. So that means there's going to be like 10% of users can't do this. And so we don't want to exclude stuff. We want to include most of these things. Module preload, add module. There's new things that are being worked on a regular basis. You can see that some of them have some support and some of them don't. But this is a great website, caniuse.com. It tells you of anything. If I use the class keyword as an example, if I say class, let's take a look at that. You can see that there's great support, 97.88% support for class lists, ES6 classes, 94.29% support across different browsers, right? And so on. Get elements by class name. It'll cover everything. So take a look at caniuse.com if you want to know if you want to use something. It's actually a really good tool. I'll get back to you in a second, Ishig. I'm going to finish this thing and then put it up on GitHub, and then we'll stop talking, and then I'll help you out. I'll help everyone else for the next few minutes. Okay, before I have to take off. All right, so yes, we did all this work. That's fantastic, but now we got to put this up on GitHub. So again, I'm going to go use the built-in stuff. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to the top where it says changes. I'm going to click this little plus button. The little plus button, which basically stages everything. And then I'm going to add a commit. I'm going to say that added the person class. Okay, added the person class. Well, actually, I added the objects module, more like objects namespace, which is what I really did. Okay, because I already added the person class, the first one. And then I take this little check mark, the commit, and then I'm going to go to this little ellipses, and I'm going to click on push, and then it's done. Okay, you should have that up online. So I'm going to stop recording here, and I'm going to remind you that Wednesday of next week, for those people who are watching the video, Wednesday of this week, sorry, your test is going to be released. You'll have until the end of the week to get it done, right? It's going to cover everything up to, but not including today, right? So everything before this. So things like basic DOM manipulation, those kind of things. How to use JavaScript, how to attach the files, how to use basic HTML5 as CSS, all that stuff you're going to be tested on again, and it's coming up on Wednesday. And I'll give you all the details when I see you guys Wednesday. I'm going to end the stream, and I'll take questions after this. Take care.